Welcome to another video, and today I am talking about Warhammer 40K Space Marine. This is in preparation for the sequel Space Marine 2 that's going to be coming out shortly. I thought I'd do a playthrough of the first game, and as a warning at the start, I am coming at this completely fresh. I'm not a fan of Warhammer, I don't know anything about the 40K series within Warhammer. I seen the trailer for Space Marine 2, I thought it looked like an awesome game, and I thought I want to go back and play the very first game in the series and see what it's all about and get myself prepared for this sequel. So I am going to be viewing this from the eyes of a total beginner, a total novice in all things Warhammer, so if that matches with yourself, you may be interested what I have to say. So the original Warhammer Space Marine game came out in September 2011. It was on 360, PC and PlayStation 3. I am playing the PC version and it runs perfectly on modern PC, so there's nothing to worry about there. And my plan today is to run you through some of the main talking points from this game. So I'm going to be looking at graphics, gameplay, audio, and of course if you need to have played this game before you pick up Space Marine 2. So let's start off with the graphics. Of course, this game, as I said, came from 2011 and it's a real game of those times. The 2010s were a lot of dull, muted color tones, a lot of browns, a lot of beiges in there, and this game basically fits that perfectly. The strange thing for me though is, at the time, I was getting sick of those styles of games and the art style and graphics, but now, going back to it, it's actually really appealing. It's like going back in a little time machine to a few years ago and thinking back to the good old days of PS3 and 360. So I really enjoyed that muted art style with the brown kind of aesthetic. It just brought me back to a simpler time in gaming. I'm playing this on a modern PC, on a gaming laptop actually, on a 4070, and it runs perfectly. So in terms of graphical capabilities, yes, it looks like a game from its time. It's not blowing me away or anything, but it still looks really good. There's a lot of different particle effects and things going on when there's a lot of enemies and gore going on the screen. Handles it perfectly and looks really good. And the graphics kind of match in with the art style and the character design, and what you're going to get here is not the first time and not the last time that this game is going to be compared to Gears of War. The characters feel and troll and look like the characters from Gears of War that you'll be playing as, so we're talking big, bulky, butch, crazy American style men. And it fits the gameplay and story amazingly, so there's nothing wrong with that. As I said, this game can get extremely gory, and those kind of graphics, when they're coming at you with a lot of different things happening, you'll be ripping orcs and stuff to shreds, gunning loads of your foes down, and this game's really impressive graphically. There's a couple of big set pieces where you're going to be having a lot of different enemies coming at you. This game looked great throughout all of that. So up next, let's talk about the gameplay, the most important bit of any video game. And what you're getting here is a third-person action shooter. Like I said, it is very much Gears of War, so if you're accustomed with that kind of gameplay and that series, you'll be right at home here. The shooting mechanics are decent. You've got a pretty good arsenal of guns and levels that are designed around each weapon. So you'll have the like of a handgun, a machine gun, a sniper type rifle, a grenade launcher, and all of these add some variety to proceedings because you can choose what way to decapitate your enemies with each weapon. But the levels are a lot of time designed around specific weapons that you've recently got a hold of, so you'll have some long range combat when you first pick up the sniper rifle, things like that. But the star of the show for me in terms of the gameplay is the hand-to-hand combat and the aerial sections. I'll get on to both of those now. In terms of hand-to-hand combat, this is very much like Gears of War, where you have your sword in this, a saw attached to it, and you'll be ripping enemies to shreds with this. There's some brutal kills, and it's really fun to just get in there and rip people to shreds with this. It's awesome. You'll feel super powerful, and it definitely splits things up, so you're not just running and gunning everything. There's a lot of hand-to-hand, and it definitely adds something to the experience. Tied in with that hand-to-hand combat, there is a risk-reward kind of system at play here. So you'll have to go in and stun enemies, and when they're stunned, press the B button, you'll pull out your sword and do an execution style killing of the enemy that you've just stunned. And when you do that, that grants you some of your health back. So the idea being that you really have to get in amongst it and put yourself at danger to try and claw back some of your health. So it's that risk-reward system of whether you want to stay back and shoot, but if you're low on health or if something's got to you, you need to really rush in and put yourself at risk to try and claw back some of that health. Really cool system. And I mentioned as part of the gameplay, I loved the aerial combat, and what I mean by this is you will get a jetpack a little bit into this game. It's not too far in, and all the footage I'm showing here is from the start of the game, first few levels, so you're not going to get too many spoilers here, but in terms of the jetpack, you'll get it, and it's really fun. You don't get to keep it indefinitely, so it will be mission kind of specific and area specific, but it adds something completely different to the gameplay. Instead of being a run and gun, this then adds vertical elements and a bit of platforming to the combat. So you'll be jetting yourself up onto platforms in the sky, and it just adds another extra dimension. You can pull out the sniper rifle and choose to take some enemies out on a rooftop, or you can jet up there and choose to take them out hand to hand or with your guns. It adds a lot of variety and just more fun to the gameplay. It makes it way more engaging, and instead of your dodge roll to get out of the way of enemies, when you have the jetpack you'll be jetting side to side to get away instead of rolling on the ground. The audio is next up, and in this there's nothing really stand out for me. In terms of the soundtrack, nothing's really been kept completely in my mind that I've been thinking of days after playing. It's just your kind of standard action combat style of soundtrack here, nothing too major going on. In terms of the voice acting, it's good, like I said, it's your gruff, burly man type of voice acting, so it fits the tone of the game perfectly. It's really well done in terms of the time. Nothing stood out in that way, and that's in a good way in terms of nothing standing out. It was just something I didn't have to think about because it was done reasonably well. The action sounds in the game are probably the best bit. The gun combat, enemies screaming, things being ripped to shreds, the crunch and squelch of guts going everywhere. It has it all in there. Nothing stands out, but that's not particularly a bad thing in terms of the audio. It all just works here. It sounds as if it should, and it suits and enhances the gameplay well, which is what you want from your audio. So do you need to play this before you play Space Marine 2? And to get the answer of that, I actually looked up a couple of interviews with the developer and the team behind the new game, and their consensus was that no, you don't need to play this before playing Space Marine 2. And I think it just makes sense. This game was a good while ago, 2011, we're now in 2024 when the new game's coming out. But what I would say is I really enjoyed my experience, and as I said at the start of the video, I'm coming at this from a complete novice. I'm not into Warhammer, I'm not into 40k, anything like that. I know there's other Warhammer games out there, Vermintide and such. I've not played any of them really to any extent. I've had a bit of a go on Boltgun and a few other things, but coming in completely fresh and completely new to this series, you don't really need to know a lot about Warhammer in general. If you have the rough idea of 40k, that it's the sci-fi version of Warhammer, and in terms of the gameplay, that it's an action style shooter game, just like Gears of War or something like that, that's really all you need to know. The story is simplistic enough, and I'm sure if you're a big fan of this franchise, you're going to be getting little bits and tidbits out of it that I won't have picked up on. Of course you will. And it probably enhances the game somewhat for you more, but I'm here to tell you that as a complete novice, as a beginner, as someone who knows nothing about this series, you can play this first game and you're going to be able to play the second game without having to know a great deal. In terms of playing the first game before the second one, as I've said, the developers have said it's not something you need to do, but I really enjoyed my experience with this and I would urge people to play it. And that brings me on to my final summary of this game, putting things into perspective and my final thoughts on it. And what I would say here is, you're getting a great game, but this is a short game. It's satisfying and not bloated, which is really great, especially in modern day gaming, where there seems to be a lot of experience that are taking 30 or 40 hours to complete. This one you could do in a day, maybe over a weekend. It's 5 or 6 hours of gameplay, and much like going back to that brown, more dull art style and graphical look, having a throwback to playing a game that's 5 or 6 hours long was also really refreshing to me, and it means you're not having a massive commitment if you're trying to get this one out of the way before moving on to Space Marine 2. The combat here is fun, it's really frantic, you'll be getting a lot of enemies on screen at the one time, and as I've said, if you're into your over-the-top gore and it's almost to the point where it's comical, this game's going to suit you down to the ground. Final thing I'm going to say is, don't buy this game at full price. If you're looking to pick this up on PC, definitely wait for a sale, because I think it's sitting at around £40 or £50 on Steam at the minute, but I picked this up for I think around £7 or £8. But I'd be pretty annoyed at the price due to the runtime and the fact that it is a dated, older game. Be paying full price for it basically isn't really an option. Hopefully with the second game coming out, this does get a steep discount and give a chance for players to jump in. And if you like this little thoughts video on Space Marine and are looking forward to Space Marine 2, please hit like on the video and consider subscribing. It'll really help the channel out. I appreciate you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.